Hey, Carlos, thanks for your time today. To get started, can you tell our audience a little bit about your background and how we work together?
Sure. So my background is in network engineering. I've been in networking since 2003. I had to think about that one. It's been a while. um, we actually had our first run-in with Phase 3 at my previous company, MedQuest Associates, when the remote practices were being sold over to Northside Hospital. And Phase 3 and Joseph were in charge of integrating all of those remote practices into Northside Hospital.
25 of them, I think. They're like 25?
20, yeah, about 25, yeah, 25 to 30. And each one of those was its own little project, if you will, because they all had to be converted over to Northside and set up with all of the Northside infrastructure, um, remove all of the MedQuest infrastructure that was in place, and put in all of the Northside stuff in there.
All those
Um,
extreme switches.
all of those extreme switches. They were fantastic.
Purple, man. I'll never forget those purple switches, man. I'm sorry.
And it was interesting because even though it was an acquisition, a lot of the infrastructure, the legacy infrastructure, was left in place while all of those remote practices were acclimated into the Northside way. So there was a lot of firewall work in place. There was a lot of security aspects of it that needed to go in play, and you know, the group Phase 3 just did everything right. They were able to work with the applications group, figure out which applications had to be kept, which applications were going to go the Northside way, and you know, it was crunch time. It was literally crunch time for quite a few weeks.
Good times, man. I remember those. I remember working with you and obviously Troy and Chrissy was a great project manager on your side. So it was a lot of fun. But as you mentioned, I mean, every site has a little bit of different setups. I think you guys were pretty standardized with your circuits, but the PAX applications and the different backend applications, there was a lot of complexity there because they were going to Northside for some apps, and some apps were going MedQuest. And then some apps were going in between Northside and MedQuest, and server to server over those tunnels. So it was a lot of fun, man. So we had a lot of problems to solve. We had a lot of complexity, and we did it. I thought, together with your expert technical knowledge and your team, we were successful.
Yeah, I distinctly remember having to look at all of the applications. And actually, now that you mentioned Chrissy, um, working with her and you guys to look at what ports were going through what IP addresses. And I mean, this was way back before layer 4 firewalls. So there was no application firewall that you could just click an application and say go. It was literally looking at each and every individual port and
Uh,
verifying each and every individual port for the application. Um, and then you actually wrote a script for that one. If I don't, I don't know if you remember that, but you actually wrote a script for that one, a conversion script that would actually ping test and verify that once the site was converted, it would ping across and make things happen.
the Pinkster.
The,
I named it like a child of mine. Being the geek that I am, I named it Pinkster, and to this day I still use that bad boy. Obviously, I use it for different purposes, but yeah. So the Pinkster, what we did is, I remember that we wanted to make sure that we could get to all the MedQuest sites
Mhm.
that from those remote practices and all the Northside stuff, and we had to make sure every single server was available on every single port, and that every website loaded. And I got tired of doing it manually, so I built a script to do it all, and it saved us a lot of time and hassle, man. It was great. Um, I love to automate stuff. That's what I love about IT. Working in technology, the whole point of technology is to make our lives easier.
Right.
And when it does that, that's great. And when it doesn't, we got a problem.
Mhm.
So, no, that was a great project. So I know we worked on the MedQuest project together. I know we had the merger with Gwinnett Medical Center and Gwinnett Hospitals that we worked on all those ACLs and firewall rules and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so I think the trend here is every time there's a merger and acquisition, phase three is there to save the day, right? It's kind of how it's going with us, right?
It was great. Yeah, we love the more complex the project, the better, because I get bored easily. I like to stay engaged, and I think being in IT when things break, you have something to fix. So it was really good to work with you over these last few years, and we've had a lot of success. I think that overall, we've been very successful with our projects, and that it's a two-way street. So a project manager is kind of just like a cat herder or a ringleader. We're
Right.
we're kind of the guy in the ring, trying to get the elephants not to stomp on us and to stand up. And working with your team, it's vital, I think, to have good relationships with the
Mhm.
IT staff. I think a lot of PMs, if they don't understand IT, they don't know how difficult your job is, because you guys don't just do the projects. You're also keeping the lights on and the network running, and you're doing changes at 2 a.m., 3 a.m.
Mhm.
So that relationship was so important to our success.
Yeah, I completely agree. And obviously, if you have a good project manager that keeps you on task and, you know, such as yourself, keeps the meetings running and make sure that everybody's on time to complete a task. And if there's something in the way of us completing that task, how can you leverage another resource, or can you offload this to a different resource? I think that is definitely key when being able to complete a particular project. So, we called you the meeting king back in the day, and it was it was because of that. Because during the meeting, you could get accomplished a lot of things, and tasks were divvied up, and people were just held accountable correctly, right? So.
Well, I appreciate that. I didn't know that was my nickname. I know the Documentation King and the Meeting King are two of the more positive nicknames I've had over the years. I won't talk about the other ones, but it's so funny because you're so right. I hate to say it. So much of our lives are spent in meetings. If
Mhm.
you got to be in a meeting, make it a good one. I
Yeah.
think that generally when we ran projects together, I tried to have one meeting a week, to go over the project. And again, to your point, immediately we pull up the dashboard. Where are we at? And then we pulled up all the tasks, and we had that accountability. We were we tried to have very productive working meetings where you knew that if you had said last week that you were going to do A, B, or C, I was going to ask you about A, B, or C this week.
Mhm.
And you were going to be held accountable, and it wasn't a negative thing, but it was all about that transparency and that honesty. And to your point, I've been in so many meetings that are snooze fests. I've been in so many meetings where there's like 50 people on the call, and you just fight to keep your eyes open, or not to play Minesweeper or Solitaire or do work or respond to emails, because they're so ineffective and inefficient. So I appreciate you guys calling me the meeting king. That means a lot to me, because I despise ineffective meetings so much. I try to make sure mine are as effective as possible. So I think that's a key to being successful as a project manager. You got to make sure that you value people's time, and that when they're sacrificing their time, because generally, what you do in network operations, tickets are always coming in, things are
Yep.
always breaking, and every minute you're in a meeting, that's a minute of downtime potentially, or that's time people are waiting to be supported. And so I think it's important to make sure that people respect your time, and that whenever you are pulled away from the queue and pulled away from operations, that time is useful and productive. So
Yep. It also, um, what we want as engineers from a meeting is to be able to get your key items and be able to go back and work on those key items. And I think that's what made you very effective and your teams very effective, um, when um, when going into these meetings and providing feedback to the engineers. Obviously, when it depends on your audience. So if there's an engineering meeting and you've got a whole bunch of engineers, you want to be very pointed. You want to provide all of those task items and say, where are we at? What are we doing? And then when you've got a meeting with leadership, you're more acquiescing to what leadership needs. What are the needs for them from that meeting? And sometimes it's very different one from the other. So, and in my particular position, I was able to see you in both realms, and it definitely was very different one from the other. So, that there goes the nickname Meeting King, because you could make any of the two meetings just work and flow in any direction.
Well,
So
I really appreciate that, Carlos. I'll tell you, it's funny. I had to learn the hard way. I remember when I was a technical, my background, kind of like you, kind of like where you are. I was a network engineer. I used to be a server guy. I started off in the help desk back. I don't want to tell you how many years ago, but um, I used to go into the weeds with leadership. I was the technical guy throwing out acronyms and ports and IPs, and I just remember the blank stare on their faces. They'd just be like, what the heck? What is he talking about? And so I had to learn the hard way. I think I might have been called out a few times by by leadership, either during or after the meeting. What are you talking about, man? You got you know, to your point, leadership wants that 1,000-foot view. They want, okay, what's the actionable item? What's red? What's yellow? What do we got to do about this? They don't want to know the why or the how, just the, what does it take? So, those are some great points. I think one of the things that we were talking about a little bit earlier before the call is, kind of the Visio diagram. So one of the things as a technical person, one of the things I love to do is when I send a request over to you and your team, I think we would work very hard with the applications groups and the business people to find out all the port ranges and all the IPs, and make sure that when we sent you a request, we actually gave you a Visio diagram that showed you exactly what we were asking for. And so we did our homework before we asked you to do anything. I mean, what was that like?
it was night and day, right? And I think every organization is um, would be so much better off from a technical side if they had that in house. Obviously, you guys provide that as a third party, and that brings your value to the table from a technical perspective. I can't begin to explain how much easier it makes my life when I get a document like that is already pretty much set up for me to just follow, almost like instructions. Step one, look for IP blah. Step two, look for port blah. Step three, make that talk to port blah on IP blah. It just, you said you like automation. It almost automates our process, right? It almost makes our job automated. Just, if you're a subject matter expert at what you're doing, right? If you know your firewalls, if you know your routing well, then it just makes it easier for you to follow through and say, okay, I need to make this talk to that, and that's, it's such a game changer as opposed to when the network team or the security team are told to figure that out by themselves. Figure out, yeah, we've got, for example, we use a lot of electronic medical records. I, for reasons obviously I can't disclose certain names, but there are certain medical record companies that do software for it. And when you're told, I need you to figure out how to get to this EMR application, you don't know. We're network people. We're not applications people. So I don't know what secret sauce a company like McKesson, for example, did on their medical records software. So the fact that you went out and found out that secret sauce and said, "Here's the sauce, make spaghetti," it just, it's such a game changer for you as an engineer.
Spaghetti sounds good right now, man. A little bit of spaghetti, a little prosciutto. Um, I think what you're saying is so important, and I think that's what we try to do. What makes us a little bit different than your average PM is we're IT people like you. I mean, we've done IT, so because we know what you need to do your job, I think that helps us to be able to get that for you, as opposed to you having to constantly be asking for more and more, and us having to constantly have meetings with you and constantly consume all your time. So I appreciate you mentioning that. You mentioned a lot of kind of the benefits of us working together. If you had to pick one of those things, what would you say made you the happiest? When you work, as you work with Phase 3, what's your favorite thing about working with us?
I think the one that we just talked about, the fact that from an engineering perspective, it just made your life so much easier as an engineer. Once the project got rolling, I can talk about how the project kickoff started, and how hands-on you guys are with the whole project process. But I think from an engineering perspective, to me, my little micro world, the fact that I didn't have to go back and forth with the project manager to try to figure out what the application was and what the application was doing. It was literally just a piece of paper that was handed to me with all the instructions. That had so much value add. And, to this day, now I am actually the manager of the group. And I talk to my engineers and they still talk about you. They still say, hey, when we were with Phase 3, it was so much easier to, go through this project process with these applications and this stuff, because they just, when the ticket came, it had all the information I needed. I didn't have to talk to anybody. It was just literally grab the ticket and go. So again, from the microcosm of an engineer's perspective, it's, it gives so much value add. Obviously, I can talk about, I could probably talk about the value add from an administrative overhead and multiple items, but I'm going to stick to my world. And I just appreciate, as an engineer, what you did for me, because it was just easy.
It was my pleasure, brother. I mean, a good PM should make things easier, right? They
Yeah.
shouldn't make your life harder. A good PM should coordinate things and put things together so that it makes everybody's life better and easier to do your job. So I appreciate that insight, and I'm going to keep on doing that. I'm going to keep on making sure that we provide the technical detail that our clients need so that they
Yeah.
can be successful. Um, would you, as we wrap things up today, what would you tell somebody who's really looking for a project management firm who has IT projects, or maybe considering Phase 3? What would you say to them?
I would say roll with it. I mean, I think Joseph and the group are, you're pleasurable. You're good people. I mean, overall, um, you know, um, very fair when it comes to the business process, um, and just easy to work with. I mean, it's not going to be a hardship. It's just gonna, you guys are going to come in and make the project successful no matter what. I've yet to see a project, and I can't think about it. I've yet to see a project that has failed, that you've been involved in. Um, and it's just been a pleasure working with you throughout these years.
What is
So, and it's funny that I have not been the one that has asked for you as a project manager. It's just kind of happened, and I've had the pleasure of doing it myself. So, yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to recommend you.
I appreciate this. The one part I'm confused about, Carlos, is you mentioned this word failure. What is that word that you speak about? I don't know it. What is this failure? I'm kidding, man. We've all had to learn the hard way sometimes, but I really appreciate your feedback. And to your point, I love working with people. I think one of my greatest joys, I used to be on the technical side, and I eventually moved over to project management. And my favorite thing about this job and what we do today is just helping people to be successful. I mean, I know how frustrating it is. I used to hate working with project managers back before when I was on the IT side, because they would meetings and time killing and time wasting. And I have 10,000 things to do right now. I got tickets piling up. I have work to do. Leave me alone. And so I guess we're kind of the unproject manager. We're kind of the PM. I think a lot of PMs these days are just glorified secretaries. No offense to anybody, but you've got a PM especially an IT project manager or project leader, we like to call ourselves, who's been in your shoes. Although I wear size 18 shoes, I don't know if I'd fit it in your shoes, but No, I'm sorry.
Probably not.
No, but I've been in your shoes. I was never a network manager per se, but I was a network engineer. I have done network projects, and I know how stressful your life is. I mean, you guys, you're 24/7, and you're always waiting for that text or that call or that alert. So when we can offload some of the project stress, and when we can help take over some of that and make your life just a little bit easier, it makes my day.